Have you ever spent years helping someone, only for them to betray you the moment they became successful? That was exactly what happened to Gu Yanxi. After being reborn, Li Shimin returned to high school believing she already knew her glorious future. In her previous life, she had climbed from poverty to become one of the country's most powerful CEOs. That success filled her with absolute confidence and made her forget who she really was. The first thing she did after returning wasn't focusing on school. Instead, she walked straight toward Gu Yanxi while holding another boy's hand. Without even greeting him, she smiled arrogantly. Starting today, transfer 50 million into Jiahao's account every month. Do that, and I'll consider being your girlfriend. The entire classroom froze. Everyone looked at Li Shimin as if she had gone completely insane. She was one of the poorest students in school. Without financial aid, she couldn't even afford decent meals. Yet now she was demanding millions as if she deserved them. Gu Yanxi couldn't help laughing. Are you dreaming? If my family hadn't supported you, you wouldn't even be able to afford lunch. And why should I pay another man's living expenses? I'm not his father. Li Shimin's face immediately darkened. Standing beside her, Jiahao quickly stepped forward to defend her. He accused Gu Yanxi of humiliating poor students and claimed that wealthy people had a responsibility to help those less fortunate. But Gu Yanxi wasn't buying it. If being rich means I have to support everyone, then why don't you solve your own problems instead of expecting mine? His reply left the classroom speechless. Jiahao tried to act like the noble hero, insisting he'd rather live on the streets than let Li Shimin lower her dignity for his sake. To everyone else it looked romantic. To Gu Yanxi, it was almost laughable, because he remembered exactly what had happened in their previous lives. Li Shimin believed Jiahao had sacrificed everything to save her after donating one of his kidneys. That single event convinced her he was the love of her life, but the truth was far uglier. Gu Yanxi had secretly paid an enormous amount of money to buy that kidney. Jiahao wasn't a selfless hero. He even demanded more money right before the operation. After becoming successful, Li Shimin repaid him by abusing company funds to buy him luxury cars, expensive houses, and even clear his gambling father's debts. Yu Yanxi had tolerated all of it, but this time, things would be different. Without saying another word, he pulled out his phone and cancelled every scholarship payment connected to Li Shimin. Seeing that, she simply smiled. I don't need your charity. She still carried herself like the billionaire she had once become. Yu Yanxi calmly opened years of payment records. Every tuition payment, every allowance, every expense. Then he looked directly into her eyes. If you have even a little conscience left, pay back everything you owe me. To make things easier, he even lowered the amount. 30 million. Instead of panicking, Li Shimin laughed. 30 million. Give me 15 years. I'll become far richer than you could ever imagine. She confidently warned him that rejecting her today would become the greatest mistake of his life. But Yu Yanxi found her confidence almost ridiculous. Without his family's support in both lives, she would never have reached the top. Immediately afterward, he froze every remaining scholarship account and handed her a repayment agreement. Li Shimin angrily pressed her fingerprint onto the document before glaring at him. Remember this day. Then she grabbed Jiahao's hand and walked away. Watching them disappear, Gu Yanxi sighed. In his previous life, he had devoted years to helping her succeed, only to create someone who repaid kindness with betrayal. Unfortunately, that confrontation was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, Gu Yanxi's driver arrived to pick him up after school. Just as he reached the car, someone suddenly shoved him from behind. He barely kept his balance. When he turned around, Li Shimin had already pushed Jiahao into his luxury sedan before climbing in herself. She casually ordered the driver to take them to the hospital, behaving as though the expensive car belonged to her. The driver didn't argue. Instead, he quietly locked the doors, called the police, and reported that two strangers had forced their way into a private vehicle and were refusing to leave. Within minutes, the situation completely spiraled out of control. Even while trapped inside the car, Li Shimin continued acting like a powerful CEO, demanding everyone obey her orders. She had no idea reality was about to hit her much harder than she expected. Inside the locked car, Jiahao's face turned pale with anxiety. Seeing him suffer, Li Shimin's heart ached. She took a deep breath, looked at Gu Yanxi, and spoke as though she were making a generous compromise. Fine, I'll continue accepting your money, but don't expect me to have any feelings for you. Before Gu Yanxi could respond, Jiahao immediately objected. No, I can't let Shimin humiliate herself for my sake. Gu Yanxi, using money to force someone into a relationship is disgusting. Li Shimin gently held Jiahao's hand. As long as I can help you, I'm willing to endure anything. Just then the police arrived. They ordered both of them to get out of the car. Li Shimin stepped out with an ugly expression and glared at Gu Yanxi. What kind of childish trick is this? You actually called the police just to get my attention. Gu Yanxi didn't even bother answering her. He simply turned to the officers and said calmly, I think these two may be suffering from some mental problems. I suggest taking them to a hospital for an examination. Then he smiled politely at Li Shimin. Don't worry. The police will personally escort you to the hospital. The officers exchanged confused looks. The pair were dressed like ordinary students, yet they behaved as though they owned the entire world. The officers finally nodded. If you're going to the hospital anyway, get in. Where exactly they were taken, Gu Yanxi never bothered to ask. That night he woke up to discover several missed calls and nearly 100 messages from Li Shimin. The final text had been sent only 20 minutes earlier. Answer within 3 minutes, or you'll regret it. Gu Yanqi yawned, switched off his phone and went straight back to sleep. The next morning, while passing the school cafeteria, he spotted Li Shimin and Jia Hao eating breakfast. Rumor had already spread across campus. The two had spent the entire night locked inside the psychiatric ward before the school finally arranged for their release. The class monitor leaned closer and whispered, "They don't look crazy, so how did they end up in the psychiatric department?" Then he explained, last night Li Shimin had sent a message to the entire class group chat claiming she would become China's richest woman in the future. She promised that anyone who lent her 1,000 yuan today would receive 100 times the amount in return. The message sounded even more ridiculous than those famous online scams. Yu Yanxi nearly choked on his drink. He was about to leave when the class monitor stopped him. "Stay. Something interesting is about to happen." Sure enough, Li Shimin picked up a glass of lemonade and slowly swirled it like an expensive vintage wine. Then she glanced at the 10 yuan plate of fried noodles on the table, her face filled with disgust. "You actually dare serve food this cheap? Even stray cats wouldn't eat something this low quality." Jia Hao immediately agreed. "Shimin deserves much better than this. But you've been hungry for an entire day. You should at least eat something." Li Shimin gave a cold smile. "I'd rather starve than eat this garbage." The noodle stall owner instantly slammed his spatula onto the counter. "You bought the cheapest noodles with a discount coupon, asked for extra vegetables, and now you're complaining. Eat it or get lost." Li Shimin stood up angrily. "Do you know who you're talking to? One phone call from me, and this tiny stall will disappear." Jia Hao hurriedly tried to calm her down. "Shimin, forget it. They're just trying to make a living at that moment." The class monitor couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. The sudden laugh immediately attracted Li Shimin's attention. Her cold gaze slowly swept across the room, before finally locking onto Gu Yanxi. The moment their eyes met, he felt a terrible sense of déjà vu. Without saying a word, he turned around and tried to leave, but Li Shimin quickly blocked the end of the hallway. She crossed her arms and stared at him with icy confidence. "So, you're unhappy after seeing me with Jia Hao. Now you're using all these childish tricks to get revenge. Gu Yanxi, give up. Jia Hao and I truly love each other. We'll never choose you. Stay away from us. If I ever find out you're still obsessed with me, I won't let you off." Gu Yanxi looked up at the ceiling and sighed. He couldn't understand how someone could become this delusional. Then he interrupted her without mercy. "So that's your plan? Pretend to be crazy so you don't have to pay for breakfast. I saw you secretly eating those noodles while no one was looking. You couldn't afford the meal, but your pride wouldn't let you admit it. So you staged this entire performance." Li Shimin's expression instantly changed. Embarrassed after being exposed, she raised her hand, ready to slap him. Gu Yanxi calmly pointed toward the security camera above them. "Go ahead. The moment you touch me, the debt you owe me doubles." Li Shimin slowly lowered her hand. She sneered. "We'll see who gets the last laugh." Gu Yanxi smiled calmly. "At your current rate, I'm not even sure you'll survive this month." A few days later, the school's annual sports festival officially began. Several successful entrepreneurs had been invited to visit the campus. For many underprivileged students, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Anyone who performed well could receive long-term financial sponsorship. Li Shimin had won the girls' long-distance championship every single year. Combined with her outstanding grades, she quickly caught the attention of a real estate company chairman. The homeroom teacher immediately led her over. "President Zhang, this student has the potential to get into one of the country's top universities. If you sponsor her, you definitely won't regret it." The businessman nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. From today onward, our company will provide you with 6,000 yuan every month until you graduate from university." The surrounding teachers smiled. To an ordinary student, that amount was already incredibly generous, but Li Shimin frowned in disappointment. "Only 6,000? Are you treating me like a beggar?" The chairman's smile instantly froze. "Our industry isn't doing very well these days. 6,000 is more than enough to cover a student's basic living expenses." Li Shimin folded her arms and shook her head. "I'll reluctantly accept help if necessary, but this amount is meaningless. I plan to build a world-class research team. I need enormous funding. I'm not on the same level as students who rely on charity. My goal is to lead the world's greatest technology company. If you can't afford that, then save your opportunity for someone else." Without waiting for anyone to respond, she turned around and walked away. President Zhang's face turned dark with anger. The homeroom teacher hurried after her. "Li Shimin." She stopped and looked back proudly. "In the future, don't introduce companies with no future prospects to me. If anyone wants to sponsor me, their company must be worth more than the Gu Group. I'll personally evaluate every sponsor. If they don't qualify, I won't even consider them." Her outrageous arrogance completely humiliated the businessman. No matter how much the principal and teachers apologized, it was already too late. President Zhang announced on the spot that he would never sponsor another student from the school again. The consequences were immediate. Two innocent twin brothers, who had been raised by their elderly grandparents, also lost their chance to receive financial support. The boys crouched in the corner, crying helplessly. Gu Yanxi quietly walked over. "Don't worry, the Gu Group will sponsor both of you." The brothers looked up in disbelief. "Really?" He smiled warmly. 8,000 yuan each month. Will that be enough? The twins hurriedly shook their heads. That's far too much. We only spend about 2,000 a month. Tears filled their eyes as they dropped to their knees in gratitude. Thank you. When we graduate, we'll definitely repay your kindness. Watching them, Gu Yanxi finally smiled. There were still people in this world who understood what gratitude meant. After the sports festival ended, the class organized a dinner together. Just as everyone expected, Li Shimin and Jie Hao showed up again despite contributing nothing. Without paying a single cent, Li Shimin walked straight to the seat of honor. She looked around with obvious disgust. The decorations are outdated. The service is terrible. The food doesn't even deserve to be called edible. Everyone at the table fell silent. Earlier that day, she had driven away an important sponsor, cost the class valuable opportunities, and even thrown away the relay race because Jie Hao had scraped his hand during the long jump. Instead of finishing the race, she abandoned the baton and rushed him to the infirmary while threatening the school doctor to treat him immediately. Now, she was criticizing the very restaurant hosting their celebration. No one wanted to speak to her. Accustomed to being treated like royalty, Li Shimin couldn't stand being ignored. She picked up the juice she had already been drinking, then deliberately poured it over the steamed fish in the center of the table. She tapped the table impatiently. Who chose such a cheap restaurant? She knew perfectly well. This restaurant belonged to the Gu family. She was deliberately trying to provoke Gu Yanxi. The homeroom teacher forced a smile. Student Li, everyone else thinks this place is excellent. What exactly are you dissatisfied with? Li Shimin let out a cold laugh. Excellent. You people have never experienced a truly high-end restaurant. That's why you think this place is impressive. Jie Hao immediately nodded in agreement. Some people are destined to stay poor forever. Shimin, don't waste your time arguing with them. They'll never be on your level. The class monitor's face turned red with anger. Just as he was about to explode, Gu Yanxi quietly stopped him and smiled. Of course, our future richest woman wouldn't lower herself to split the bill with ordinary people. Since she looked down on everyone so much, he decided to give her exactly what she wanted. Picking up the restaurant bill, he placed it directly in front of her. Since you're destined to become the richest woman in the country, you won't mind paying for today's meal, right? Li Shimin glanced at the total, 4,000 yuan. For a brief moment, her expression stiffened. Gu Yanxi immediately exaggerated his surprise. What? Surely 4,000 isn't even pocket change for someone like you. She instantly realized he was mocking her, but with dozens of classmates watching, she couldn't back down. After a long silence, she grabbed the bill. Fine, I'll pay. Then she dragged Jie Hao out with her. Nearly half an hour later, the two finally returned, but something was different. The jade pendant that Jie Hao always wore around his neck had disappeared. The moment Li Shimin sat down, she shot Gu Yanxi a vicious glare, as if he were somehow responsible for what had happened. Gu Yanxi immediately understood. To save face, they had probably sold Jie Hao's family heirloom to pay the restaurant bill. Before anyone could say anything else, the private dining room door suddenly burst open. Several rough-looking men stormed inside. Without warning, they grabbed Jie Hao and tried to drag him away. You little brat. Your father owes us money. If the debt isn't repaid today, you're coming with us. Jie Hao's face instantly turned pale. That's my father's debt. What does it have to do with me? I'm still a student. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? Terrified, he clung desperately to the table leg. A few male students instinctively stepped forward to help, but the thugs immediately revealed weapons. Everyone froze. The leader pulled out Jie Hao's student ID and waved it in front of him. Your father escaped from the hospital this morning. He left behind a note. He said his son would repay everything. The room instantly fell silent. Just as the men prepared to drag him away, Jie Hao suddenly shouted, Wait, I can repay the debt. My girlfriend will become the richest woman in China. She promised she'd help me settle everything. The thugs stared at him. Then they burst out laughing. The richest woman in China? You think we're idiots? Panicking, Jie Hao pointed toward the restroom entrance. It's true. Look. Everyone followed his finger. At that exact moment, Li Shimin walked back into the room. She was wearing cheap clothes worth less than a few hundred yuan. From head to toe, she looked like an ordinary poor student, yet she carried herself like the chairman of a global corporation. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and declared, How much does he owe? The leader smirked. Over 1 million yuan. Li Shimin nodded calmly. I'll repay it. The room fell silent again. Then she borrowed a pen and paper from a nearby waiter. Like an experienced business executive signing a major contract, she quickly wrote an IOU. 15 years from now, I, Li Shimin, will repay this debt with 10 times the interest. The entire room stared at her in disbelief. Even the debt collectors looked stunned. For a moment, nobody knew whether they were dealing with a genius or someone who had completely lost touch with reality. The debt collectors stared at the handwritten IOU, then looked back at Li Shimin as if she were completely insane. One of them crumpled the paper and threw it onto the floor. You think we're waiting 15 years? We want cash. Right now. Li Shimin's expression finally changed. Instead of arguing with the collectors, she suddenly walked straight toward Gu Yanxi. Without warning, she grabbed his arm and leaned in as if she were about to kiss him. Gu Yanxi's eyes widened. Disgusted, he violently shook her off. Then, slap, his hand landed squarely across her face. The room instantly fell silent. Holding her swollen cheek, Li Shimin stared at him in disbelief. What are you pretending for? In our previous life, you loved me more than anything. Gu Yanxi looked at her coldly. That was 3 years later. Right now, we're nothing but strangers. For the first time, Li Shimin seemed genuinely surprised. Then she slowly smiled. So, you've been reborn too. It didn't shock her at all. After all, the three of them had died together in the explosion. If she and Jia Hao had returned with their memories, there was no reason Gu Yanxi couldn't have done the same. In that case, she said confidently, there's no need to waste any more time. Give me the money now. In 15 years, I'll guarantee you a life of unimaginable wealth. But if you refuse, you should remember exactly what happened after you offended me in our previous life. Gu Yanxi couldn't help laughing. The only reason you became the richest woman before was because my family cleared every obstacle in your path. Without us, you wouldn't even have reached the starting line. He turned around and walked away without another glance. Behind him, Li Shimin shouted at the top of her lungs, Gu Yanxi, one day, you'll regret today's decision. Later, the class monitor told him what had happened after he left. Li Shimin had arrogantly claimed she personally knew the boss behind the loan sharks. The collectors treated her like a complete lunatic. If the class monitor hadn't called the police in time, the two of them might have been thrown into the river before sunrise. Not long afterward, the class monitor gathered everyone together. I've got news. Li Shimin and Jia Hao have officially dropped out of school. They said they're entering the business world. Gu Yanxi wasn't surprised. A few days earlier, Li Shimin had already been sending him threatening messages. She claimed she would destroy his reputation. She even asked whether he regretted the choices he had made in his previous life. If you had accepted Jia Hao, you could still have been the husband of China's richest woman. Gu Yanxi replied with only one sentence. You wanted to keep another man while staying married to me. What makes you think you deserve that? After reading the reply, Li Shimin never responded again. But Gu Yanxi knew this wasn't the end, not even close. In his previous life, she had secretly stolen company money to buy Jia Hao luxury villas and sports cars. She had even helped repay his father's gambling debts. When Gu Yanxi finally uncovered everything, she was already 4 months pregnant with Jia Hao's child. At the time, Jia Hao had been dreaming of replacing him completely. When Gu Yanxi confronted them, neither of them felt any guilt. Only after the lawyers announced that Li Shimin would leave the marriage with absolutely nothing did Jia Hao panic. He secretly turned on the gas inside the house, then shoved Gu Yanxi into the room, planning to kill him and erase all evidence. But just before the explosion, Gu Yanxi grabbed both of them. If he was going to die, they would die with him. That was why all three of them had been reborn. In this life, he originally wanted nothing more to do with either of them, but since Li Shimin insisted on becoming his enemy once again, he had no reason to show her any mercy. 3 days later, Gu Yanxi accompanied his father to a startup incubator to evaluate new business projects. The moment Li Shimin saw him, a smug smile appeared on her face. She quickly hid the business proposal in her hands behind her back and said proudly, I'd rather cooperate with anyone else than with the Gu Group. Gu Yanxi, stop dreaming. Gu Yanxi simply smiled to himself. She had completely misunderstood why he was there. He hadn't come to invest in her. He had come for someone else. In his previous life, the person his father truly valued wasn't Li Shimin. It was an outstanding senior named Lin Yi. His father had even hoped the two of them would eventually marry, allowing Lin Yi to lead the Gu Group in the future. But back then, Gu Yanxi had foolishly devoted all of his heart to Li Shimin. Because of that mistake, Lin Yi had remained nothing more than the company's vice president. To the outside world, Li Shimin had been celebrated as the brilliant CEO. But behind the scenes, nearly every major business decision had been made by Lin Yi. This time, Gu Yanxi refused to repeat the same mistake. He would make sure Lin Yi finally received the recognition she deserved. After only a 30-minute presentation, his father made his decision. We're investing. The meeting ended with warm applause. Soon afterward, Lin Yi personally approached Gu Yanxi. Thank you. If you hadn't recommended me, Chairman Gu might never have come here. Gu Yanxi shook his head with a smile. You earned this with your own ability. I only opened the door. Before long, Lin Yi proved everyone right. Her incredible talent quickly made her the person Gu Yanxi's father trusted most. Meanwhile, Gu Yanxi was admitted to one of the country's top universities. There, he officially joined Lin Yi's research team. Jia Hao suddenly came to campus looking for him. His face was full of pride. Shimin has already secured investment. It may only be 2 million yuan, but this is just the beginning. In less than 10 years, she'll stand at the top again. Li Shimin crossed her arms and looked down at Gu Yanxi. You've already enjoyed being the husband of the richest woman. Now, it's his turn. Gu Yanxi smiled calmly. I sincerely wish you both good luck. However, before Li Shimin could celebrate her success, terrible news arrived. The so-called investment had been nothing more than a scam. The investors had lured her in with false promises and cheated her out of everything. Her patents were sold for almost nothing. Her business ideas were stolen. Even the website she worked so hard to build was hacked repeatedly. After suffering one crushing failure after another, Li Shimin finally couldn't take it anymore. She rushed to Gu Yanxi's university and blocked his path. It was you. You're sabotaging me from behind the scenes. You're afraid I'll rise again and take revenge. Before Gu Yanxi could answer, Lin Yi stepped forward and stood in front of him. Miss Li, I've studied your situation. You do have talent, but talent alone isn't enough. The business world is far crueler than you imagine. Li Shimin's face twisted with rage. And who are you? In my previous life, you were nothing but my subordinate. Stop pretending to lecture me. Get out of my way. Lin Yi's eyes turned cold. She firmly grabbed Li Shimin's wrist. If you dare harass Yancy again, I won't be this polite. With that, she personally escorted Li Shimin off campus. Watching her leave, Gu Yancy realized something. Without the Gu family's guidance, without Lin Yi's support, Li Shimin wasn't an unstoppable business genius. She was simply someone who had mistaken other people's efforts for her own talent. Blinded by ambition and desperation, Li Shimin eventually joined what she believed was a promising business venture. She had no idea it was actually a large-scale fraud ring. The class monitor noticed something suspicious and immediately reported it to the police. 3 months later, Li Shimin was arrested. Soon afterward, the police contacted Gu Yancy. They wanted his assistance with the investigation. Specifically, they wanted to see the messages Li Shimin had been sending him during the past few months. Gu Yancy unlocked his phone and handed it over. The officers scrolled through the chat history. The messages became more desperate with each passing day. Gu Yancy, lend me 1 million. I'll forgive everything that happened. Just give me another 30 million. My company is about to succeed. Once I make my comeback, I promise I won't take revenge on you. A few weeks later, the amount dropped again. 300,000 is enough. Then, just 100,000. Finally, 10,000. Please. Even the police couldn't stop themselves from laughing. The contrast between her arrogant threats and desperate begging was almost unbelievable. Just as Gu Yancy prepared to leave, one of the officers stopped him. There's something else. Li Shimin refuses to cooperate. She said she'll only tell us everything if she can meet you. At first, Gu Yancy wanted to refuse, but if speaking with her could help expose the entire fraud organization and prevent more victims, he agreed. Inside the detention center, Li Shimin no longer looked like the proud CEO she once pretended to be. Wearing handcuffs, she sat quietly with her head lowered. When she finally saw Gu Yancy, she remained silent for a long time. Then, she softly whispered, "I'm sorry." Following the officer's instructions, Gu Yancy asked calmly, "When you joined the organization, didn't you realize something was wrong?" Li Shimin gave a bitter smile. I knew from the very beginning, but I couldn't accept reality. I couldn't accept that the powerful CEO I once was had become this pathetic. She slowly lowered her head. Only now do I finally understand. I'm nothing. Without you, I can't accomplish anything. My pride wouldn't let me admit it, so I kept trying to prove everyone wrong. I wanted to show the world, I wanted to show you, that my success belonged to me. But every failure only proved the opposite. Tears quietly rolled down her face. The truth is, I loved you all along. In our previous life, no matter how successful I became, I could never win your admiration. I always felt like everything had been arranged by you. As a woman, I wanted someone who would constantly admire me. Jiahao gave me that feeling. He always praised me. He made me feel like I was standing above everyone else. So I became addicted to his flattery. She looked up at Gu Yancy with tearful eyes. When you caught us together, I wanted to save our marriage. I wanted to start over, but you insisted on divorcing me. The explosion, that was Jiahao's decision. I never wanted you to die. After we were reborn, I stayed with Jiahao, only because I still resented you. I kept asking myself, if you truly loved me, then why did you drag me into death with you? The room fell silent. Gu Yancy listened without changing his expression. When she finally finished, he stood up. Are you done? I have work to do. Lin Yi's new research project is short on people. I don't have time to stay here. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit. Just as Gu Yancy reached the door, someone suddenly rushed into the visitation room. It was Jiahao. His eyes were red with anger. Without hesitation, he shoved Gu Yancy aside and pointed furiously at Li Shimin. You lied to me. You said I was the man you loved. I even saved your life. If I hadn't donated my kidney, you would have died. You promised we'd spend the rest of our lives together. You promised you'd earn enough money to repay my father's gambling debts. But instead, you disappeared after taking the property deed my mother left me. Where's the money? Give it back. Li Shimin laughed bitterly. Your kidney. That kidney was bought with Gu Yancy's money. You weren't some selfless hero. You were just the seller. In our previous life, I bought you luxury villas, sports cars, and even took you traveling around the world. But none of that was enough for you. You still wanted to replace Gu Yancy completely. You were the one who encouraged me to leave school after we were reborn. If it weren't for you, I would have never joined that fraudulent company. Now I'm going to prison, and you're coming with me. She immediately turned toward the police officers. Officer, I want to report Jiahao. He's part of the fraud organization. He's the one who brought me into it. Jiahao exploded with rage. Shut up, you gold-digging woman. A little praise, and you really thought you were destined to become the richest woman in the country. You were completely broke, but you kept pretending to be wealthy. It makes me sick. If you don't return my family's property deed, and my ancestral jade pendant, I'll expose every crime you've committed. The two of them began accusing each other non-stop. Each was desperate to reduce their own punishment by revealing the other's crimes. Gu Yancy quietly watched the entire scene unfold. It was almost ironic. The two people who had once betrayed him were now destroying each other. Suddenly, Li Shimin looked toward him one last time. Yancy, we were husband and wife once. Please, help me. If you're willing to save me, I'm sure my sentence can still be reduced. Gu Yancy's expression remained completely calm. Do you know how many families have been destroyed by fraud? This is the consequence of your own choices. You deserve to face the law. After that day, Jia Hao completely disappeared. Rumor had it that he later went to the police covered in bruises. He claimed his gambling-addicted father had sold him to a wealthy older woman. He begged the officers to rescue him. The police investigated the case. However, the woman produced a legal marriage certificate. Jia Hao's father also confirmed the marriage. In the end, the case was closed as a family dispute. No one ever heard from Jia Hao again. When Li Shimin was finally released from prison, it happened to be the day of the class reunion. She came, but didn't dare enter. She simply stood outside, secretly watching everyone through the window. Her eyes eventually settled on Lin Yi. They were filled with jealousy, regret, and unwillingness to accept reality. In this life, Lin Yi had become the richest woman in Asia in only 3 years. In the previous timeline, it had taken Li Shimin 15 years to reach that same position. Gu Yanxi's father had once hoped they would marry, but Gu Yanxi had always treated Lin Yi like an older sister. Lin Yi never forced him. She simply respected him, supported him, and stayed by his side. As for the twin brothers Gu Yanxi had sponsored years earlier, they had graduated from university. Although they attended ordinary colleges, they worked harder than anyone else. After finding success, they brought their grandparents to the city so they could finally enjoy a comfortable life. Despite receiving countless offers from famous companies, both brothers chose to remain by Gu Yanxi's side. Their gratitude never changed. Looking at the people around him, Gu Yanxi smiled. In his previous life, he had wasted everything on those who betrayed him. But in this life, he chose to invest in people who truly deserved kindness, and with loyal friends by his side, he believed that one day they would build an even greater business empire together.